Hi everybody. Um, so I see by a show of hands that you can hear me. Um, yeah. So I'm Kurt from living out in Rockville, Maryland, and it's great to see everyone. Thank you for being here and for sharing a part of your Thanksgiving weekend together. One Thanksgiving tradition, or something that many people do during this time of year, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, is watch The Wizard of Oz. And if you haven't done that yet this year, I would encourage you to do that. So there's a wonderful scene, a very famous scene at the end of The Wizard of Oz, near the end, where Dorothy and her three friends, the woodman, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion, are together with the wizard, and the wizard has promised to help them all. And so the Scarecrow wants a brain, the Tin Man wants a heart, and the Lion wants courage. And Dorothy wants to go back home to Kansas. So to the wizard says to the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow, well, you already have what you're looking for. But they won't accept it. They say, oh no, you'll have to do better than that. You promised to help us, so help us. And so he has to give them something. For example, with the Scarecrow, he says, you already have brains, but there's one thing you don't have. You don't have a diploma. And so he gives him a diploma. And even as he's giving him the diploma, he says again, you already have brains. In fact, you have more brains than a lot of people who have diplomas. But now you have the diploma too, you know. And he does the same thing with the other two, with the Lion, and with the Lion he gives the Lion a medal, and with the Tin Man he gives him a testimonial to his kindness and compassion. And so, and each time he reiterates, you already have what you're looking for, but now you have this thing that you can hold in your hands that is a symbol of it, that other people can see, and it works. So now the Scarecrow is intelligent. He actually is. He can. He's very proud of his thinking. The Lion really does become fearless, and the Tin Man really does begin to feel his emotions, and his love, and his ability to love and to feel compassion. But then the wizard turns to Dorothy and says, your case is different. The only way I can get you to Kansas is if I take you there in my balloon. So he has a balloon, apparently. And so in the movie, it cuts to the next scene where the balloon is there. There's a big crowd to give them the send off, and the wizard and Dorothy are in the balloon. And of course, Dorothy has her dog with her, and Toto. And Toto looks out in the crowd and sees a cat, and jumps out of Dorothy's arms, chases after the cat. And so Dorothy jumps out of the balloon and grabs Toto, picks him up, and runs back to the balloon. But by then, the balloon is taking off and is just out of reach and goes away. So fortunately, at this point, Glinda, the Good Witch, appears. And she says to Dorothy what the wizard had said to her three friends. She says, Glinda says to Dorothy, you've had the ability to go home all along. And Dorothy is a little perturbed by this. She says, well, why didn't you tell me before? And Glinda says, because you had to learn something for yourself. You had to learn for yourself. And Dorothy has this realization at that point. And what is the realization? The realization is the famous catchphrase from the movie, There's No Place Like Home. Because Dorothy remembers that when she was home, when she was in Kansas, she wanted to get out. She wanted, as the song goes, she wanted to go over the rainbow. She wanted to go someplace more exciting, more interesting, more, in the movie, literally more colorful. Kansas is black and white. Oz is in color. And so it took being taken away from home and going through this adventure in Oz to make her realize, oh, well, this is kind of interesting, but there's no place like home. And that's actually the magic mantra that she has to chant as she's clicking her ruby slippers together. This is her realization and her mantra. There's no place like home, and that's what gets her back home. Now the book, interestingly, is a little different. So the book was written over 35, I forget when the movie came out, but the book came out in 1900. The movie first came out in the 1930s. In the book, there's the same scene with the wizard, up to and including the part with the balloon. And it's also, again, the wizard tells him, you already have what you want, but they won't accept it until he gives them something, something that they can hold in their hands. And then they get it. And he tells Dorothy, your case is different. The only way you can get home is I take you in the balloon. Then there's a scene with the balloon, and Toto jumps out of the balloon, and Dorothy just barely misses it as it goes away. But then it's a little different in the book. Glinda doesn't magically appear to them. So they realize that the only way for Dorothy to get back home now that the wizard is gone, they have to go find Glinda, the good witch, and maybe she can help. And so she goes on yet another adventure that takes a couple of chapters in the book to get to Glinda, the good witch, and her friends come along with her. And then Glinda says to Dorothy, oh, well, you've had the ability to go home all along. But now Dorothy doesn't get perturbed and say, well, why didn't you tell me that before? Instead, she has this a different realization. Not there's no place like home, but she says this out loud. She says, oh, but if I had gone home before, then I wouldn't have made these new friends, and I wouldn't have been able to help them to get what they want. And now that I've done that, now I can go home, which is pretty interesting. Oh, well, okay. So, that's the Bodhisattva path, right? Not for me. Not when do I get, mine, but and so the major difference between Dorothy's path and the full-blown true Bodhisattva path is that the Bodhisattva path, at least as it's described in the traditional sutras and stories about the Buddha, is that the Bodhisattva path is taken on consciously, intentionally. The Buddha, in his previous lifetime as Sumedha, when he lived at the time of the great Buddha Dipankara, Sumedha saw that he could attain enlightenment. He could attain arhatship, become enlightened and leave samsara. But he consciously chose to go on the path to not only attain release from samsara for himself, but to become a Buddha so that he could help others to attain release from samsara. And so, so that's the full-blown Bodhisattva path. But the Dorothy Bodhisattva path is probably more accessible, at least I know it is to me, where, I honestly, it's, to me, I'm not consciously choosing not to become I'm here. I feel pretty stuck here. And so the path that Dorothy takes is not where she has consciously decided, no, I am not going to go back to Kansas until I have made my new friends and helped them. She follows the yellow brick road. And the yellow brick road turns out to be the path of friendship. She meets these three new friends, and she takes them in. She says, "Yes, you're looking for something. I'm looking for something. Let's look together." Um, and then they do find it together. So there's many kinds of together action, and together action uh, is actually not so much, a matter of being consciously saying, "Oh, I could do this." But together action means going forward. The people that you meet are your friends, and their problems are your problems, and you go together. Um, and and so it might seem like a bit of a stretch, but Frank Baum actually was quite interested in Buddhism, and he was a writer, a professional writer, not a very successful writer. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, he became quite well. He did good when he wrote The Wizard of Oz. He was very, very successful. But he was terrible with money, terrible at business. He lost all the money that he made from it. Fortunately, he married up. His wife was not only a very outspoken feminist and political activist, but her mother who was also very active in progressive politics, but was also rich. So that helped. But Frank Baum was I don't know, he was a theosophist. People are familiar at all with Theosophy. Just as a little bit of Buddhist trivia, D.T. Suzuki, one of the most famous, one of the most important people in the transmission of the Dharma to the West, warts and all, one has to say, in D.T. Suzuki's case. His wife was a theosophist, and his wife helped him to figure out how to communicate with Westerners. Anyway, so, we're all on the yellow brick road together. We have encountered each other here in this Zoom meeting, and we're doing our together action here, and we're making it possible. Each of Dorothy's friends played a vital role in that journey, finally getting to the wizard. And it's also interesting, and this is one of the good things about the book. Another interesting thing about the book, each of Dorothy's friends had gotten what he was after, but Dorothy still hadn't. So they stuck with her, and they kept with her, and they went together. And it was a bit of a difficult journey to get to Glinda the Good Witch. And the Scarecrow needed his brains, and the Woodman needed his heart, and the Tin Man needed his heart. The Tin Woodsman, and the Lion needed his fearlessness in order for them to help their friend to get to Glinda, so that she could get back home. And I'm pretty sure in the book, the phrase ""there's no place like home" doesn't come up, but that's another piece of trivia. So, it's wonderful to see everyone. Thank you so much for your practice. We all make each other's practice possible. I think it's always worth stating that, if I had clicked on the Zoom link and no one else was there, no one else showed up, I would have hung around for 10, 15 minutes maybe to see if anyone else did show up. But then if no one did, I might have, well, it's hard to say which way that would have gone. But now that you're all here, I kind of have to stay, right? We support each other in that way. And thank you very much for that support. Thank you for your practice, and thank you for listening.